right, welcome to the first official therapy session of the 2024 Rutgers football season. One of the most demoralizing, most brutal losses, most frustrating losses in my 4 decades as a fan. And we're just going to shoot from the hip here. This is what we do in the rapid reactions. And I think what sums it up more than anything, well, there's so many things I actually took pretty good notes. So I have a lot of points to cover here. There's a lot to talk about. But the biggest stat that just will wake me up in the middle of the night for the rest of my days is that Rutgers had the ball in Nebraska territory 9 times out of 11 possessions, 9, and they scored 7 points, 8 in a row without a point until they scored late in the game on that 9th drive or 10th drive. Just absolutely brutal. So many reasons why, but that game was for the taking. They lose at Nebraska 14-7 in a game where the Rutgers defense, I mean, listen, this team is banged up. There's no doubt. The Rutgers defense, I have to say, I'm immensely proud of because they battled, and they're clearly banged up. I haven't seen the snap counts yet. This is, again, a rapid reaction, but, Wesley Bailey's dealing with stuff. Flip Dixon's dealing with stuff. Troy Rainey's dealing with stuff. Robert Longerbeam was questionable, dealing with stuff. So many guys, and the Tyrone Powell's just working his way back, and he, showed flashes. I mean, he is so important to this team and this defense. He's just so valuable. And the defense played more than well enough to win this game. Granted, they gave up 2 red zone scores, right? Nebraska had 2 trips to red zone. They scored twice, ball game. But in a reasonable game, you give up 14 points. I mean, the stats are crazy. I'm looking at this, and it's just making me more angry. Nebraska had just 261 yards of total offense. Rutgers, as abysmal as the offense was, outgained Nebraska by 3 yards in this game. Dylan Raiola completely held in check. 13 of 27, 134 yards, and an interception. Flip Dixon, tremendous read there. David Anderson, I talked about in the preview. Raiola has a tendency to just throw it where he wants to throw it. He was going to the spot, and he didn't see Dixon, and he had a great interception. Of course, Rutgers' offense did not capitalize. But if you told me before the game that Dylan Raiola was going to throw 13 of 27 for 134 yards and an interception, and Rutgers loses while rushing for 2.3 yards per carry, unbelievable. Total missed opportunity. The offense has really, it's crazy. We were coming into this game. We talked about it earlier in the week about being more confident in the offense than the defense. And the offense completely fell apart today for multiple reasons. I'm going to go through some notes here. Overall, let me just run through some stats first. Rutgers, 264 yards total offense. Ethan Kaliakmanis, by far the worst game of his Rutgers tenure through 5 games. 15 of 37, 186 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, just 41% completion percentage. Rutgers ran just 78 yards and 32 carries, 2.4 yards per carry. This is after, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they ran the ball down their throats in the first quarter, and then for some reason basically abandoned the run, which we're going to get to in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. Special teams, you had, well, let's just get into my notes because I'm all over the place here. The fake field goal. All right, so fake field goal. Rutgers is down. No, it's 0-0. Fake field goal from the 25-yard line. First drive. And they bring out Timmy Ward to hold the snap, and he ran for it up the gut, got stopped. It's easy. Listen, hindsight's 2020. It's easy to criticize it now, but I don't understand it, and I didn't understand it in the moment. To do a fake like that on the first attempt, I just don't think, Nebraska's Matt Rule's a good coach. Like bringing Timmy Ward in to hold when he never holds is just, that's a red flag. That's a signal to the Nebraska that something's going on. And the fact that he just tried to run it up the gut, there was a gap there for a second, and then I felt like he just maybe read it wrong. I don't know. He kind of went through the tackle when it was between the guard and the center, and he missed the spot. Split second, boom, closes up. And I just think you do Jay Patel no favors. And it was driving me crazy how the game announcers kept saying special, kicking troubles for Rutgers. Listen, Jay Patel, he had a block last week, right? That didn't count, but that was a coverage issue. He's 2 of 4 going into this game for the season. He did miss that key field goal against Virginia Tech. He pulled it together and won the game there. He missed a 53-yarder. Like, as accurate as he was last year, it's too early to say kicking troubles, right? He hasn't had the best start, but I don't think losing confidence in him makes sense yet. So to do that fake, right, when you have an opportunity to kick a 42-yard field goal, take a lead on the road, I don't get it. I think it was a bad call. I think it set the tone in a way. It's not an excuse for all the other mistakes that happened, but as the game went on and points were so precious, you kept thinking about that call. Like, geez, if they just had gotten those 3 points, it would change the whole dynamic of this game because nobody can score. And then the following drive, you're in Nebraska territory. It's 3rd and 3, and you run instead of just running it, right? And Kyle Monangai, first quarter, 8 carries, 64 yards, 8 yards a carry. He ran once in the second quarter until about a minute and a half to play after they were down 14-0. I don't understand it. Kirk Shiraka has called things really, really well, I think, this year up to this game. I've been very positive about him. I've praised him. I've praised the decision-making. And today, I don't know what happened. I don't know. They were banged up at receiver. Chris Long was playing with something. He was questionable on the injury report. Ian Strong played. He was questionable on the injury report. There was obviously issues. Offensive line, major issues, which we're going to get into. Terrible news. Brian Felter now out for the year. We'll get to that. But I don't, and I've said, I was vocal. I thought Ethan Kaliakmanis had to have, a very big game. And I didn't mean he needed to throw 50-yard bombs. I meant he needed to be very efficient. He needs to execute on 3rd down. He had to make some critical plays in the pass game for Rutgers to win this game. So I didn't disagree with them throwing the ball, but it was the timing and the sequence that they did it. And I thought 3rd and 3, you throw the ball. Why? And then it's 4th and 3. And I think my notes, hold on. It was 3rd and 3. And why don't you just commit to the run there twice and just shove it down their throats? Instead, they throw it. It's 4th and 3. They're going for it. They had a false start. It's kind of saved them. They punted instead. But I just thought that decision-making, so early in the game, not to go to your strength, which was working. It just, I didn't understand it. Then later on, they're at the Nebraska 29, 1st and 10. 0 runs on the series. They just threw it, struggled. Couldn't get any points. Then you bring Patel out for a 52-yard field goal, and he missed it off the post. Again, you kick that first field goal. He makes it from 42. If he makes it, right, you have to assume he's got more confidence on that 52-yarder. And on that 52-yard attempt, Tyler Needham had a false start that pushed him back 5 yards. It would have been a 47-yard attempt. So, again, there's just so many mistakes that happened. Coaching decisions, execution on the field. Dremel had a couple bad punt returns in this game. Again, 9 possessions in Nebraska territory, 7 points. I wonder if Shiano and Shiraka were maybe making some. It was almost like they were overthinking it, and I wonder how banged up this team really is. I'm concerned. Also, Ethan Kaliakmanis wore a knee brace today. Again, I haven't seen the press conference yet. I'm not there. This is a rapid reaction, but it just felt like they were overthinking things and trying to get too creative or too cute and just not. Because I thought as bad as many missed opportunities early on in the game when it was about, 12 minutes left in the half, they had delivered body blows on all 3 phases. Defensively, they had gotten some good hits in. They were playing physical. Offensively, Monungai was running it up, or had some big runs. They were running physically. Special teams, they just obliterated the punter on that first partial block, had 2 blocks in this game. I just thought they were starting to deliver some body blows, but they weren't kind of sticking to, I don't know if it's being over dramatic saying identity or not, but it just felt like, what are we doing here? We're not doing what typically is a strength. And it just felt odd. And I don't know why. They completely abandoned the run in that second quarter, and it cost them. And they were down 14-0. Now, Kalikmanis had 2 late interceptions, which really hurt momentum. Credit to the defense, had a big stop right before the half. If Nebraska goes down and scores after that second interception before the half, I mean, the game's over. And I know many fans probably thought, oh, the game's over anyway. It's 14-0. But, I still thought this team had a chance because there were certain positives. The defense wasn't playing that badly, and I thought they could still run the ball. And they really just, I don't know. They didn't really go back to it. Credit to Jameer Wright-Collins with that block punt in the third quarter to get them back in the game. Shaquan Loyal picked it up. Devastating to get caught on the 2-yard line. If he had obviously gotten in, it would have changed the entire dynamic of the game. And then it set up the most frustrating possession for the offense at the 2-yard line, 1st and goal, 6 or 7 plays from scrimmage, and they can't score. There was a penalty that got him back to the 5. It's first and goal from the 5. Kyle Monungai, I haven't seen the replay. It looked like he got in. They called his knee down, and it was ruled down at the half-yard line. Now, people are questioning, why wasn't it challenged? Why wasn't it reviewed? According to the rules, if it's not ruled a touchdown on the field, it's not an automatic review. The only way, and there's no coach's challenge. It's not the NFL. The only time it can be reviewed is if the replay official in the booth makes the decision to review it. Now, you could argue Rutgers could have called a timeout, and then they would have reviewed it, but there's no guarantee that would have happened. It's one of those bad breaks. I chalk it up as when you're making negative plays, when you're making bad decisions, when you're making mistakes, you don't get the benefit of the doubt from the officials. That's kind of how I chalk it up. Obviously, if they reviewed it, I think it was a touchdown, and that would have changed the dynamic as well. But it didn't happen. But again, you make your own luck sometimes, and Rutgers did themselves no favors in making 0 luck. They had negative luck today. So then they come up empty there. The offensive line, you could really see they could get no push there. And let's talk about the offensive line. Just as good as they've been, and as good of as happy of a story as they have been last year, this year, the wheels really fell off today. And I think of any takeaway in terms of, there's going to be a lot of emotions in a loss like this. There's going to be a lot of overreactions. People are going to say the season's over. The people are going to bring up last week and the week before that it was a sign. We were telling you they weren't good. Just throw that crap out the window. Every week is different, right? But the offensive line, they lose Felter now for the season. And it wasn't all on replacing him. I know Taj White got the start. But as an offensive line, they just made critical mistakes today they haven't made all season. Multiple false starts. It's a holding call. They just pass protection. They give up 4 sacks. They couldn't open enough holes there after that first quarter. They just got beat up and bludgeoned by the Nebraska front 7, and it wasn't pretty. And that was the biggest reason for the offensive struggles, without a doubt. And it's the biggest concern now moving forward with this team, because if the offensive line is going to take a step back long term, then there's serious questions about how good the offense can be. Now, it was one game, right? But Brian Felter, he's just been the Swiss Army knife for this offensive line his whole career. And he really settled in there at left guard. And it's a huge loss now. We've talked about the cohesion, the stability of the offensive line. Losing him is a major blow. We saw that, Nebraska got on the edge and got around the tackles a few times today, including Holland Pierce, who also had a penalty. I mean, it was just nobody on that line had a good game today. How many penalties overall? Rutgers, 4 penalties for 28 yards. Not killer, but when they happen, they really hurt. Nebraska had their usual 7 penalties for just 37 yards. But overall, the offense only rushed for 2.4 yards per carry. That's not good enough. You give up 4 sacks, multiple penalties. Terrible day for the offensive line, and a major concern moving forward. Next possession, they didn't go for the block on the third. After 2 blocks, Nebraska's punting from their end zone. Basically, they actually set up for the return, and they got it to Nebraska 28. It was still, wasn't. I feel like they didn't take advantage of it enough, and they went 3 and out. They got sacked. Hutmacher, that just absolute beast for Nebraska, was a major problem in this game, and they couldn't take advantage. It was just so frustrating that third quarter when they were set up to really they could have taken over the game. As bad as they played in the first half, the third quarter was set up for them to take over the game, and they couldn't do it. And then they give up that fake punt to Nebraska. Credit to the defense. Jordan Thompson, Aaron Lewis with sacks. There was another big hit for no gain. I forget who had it in secondary. But it just, that's where you saw, this Rutgers defense did not give up. They never gave up. They played their asses off. And you feel for them because they took a lot of heat going into this game. And again, David Anderson and I talked about last week. I think some of that was by design in terms of how many yards they allowed. And I mean, they did a great job today. They're not 100%, dealing with a lot of injuries, and the defense came through in a major way. And after that fake punt, Nebraska easily could have gone out and scored. It would have been 20-0, and it would have been over. But the defense kept Rutgers in the game. And then pinned in their own, Nebraska punted down, I think the Rutgers 2, pinned in their own end zone. Kalikmanis finally with the best throw of the day to Ben Black, speedster freshman, got it to midfield. And then later in that possession, he replicated it. The defender fell down. Ben Black was wide open and dropped it right at the end zone. And he's a freshman, and he's going to be kicking himself for that. And it just kind of was unfortunately epitomized so many frustrations for this game. Rutgers doesn't score. They get the ball right back. Credit to the offense. They go back down, and good for Ben Black. He catches a touchdown pass from Ethan Kalikmanis, who battled throughout the game. Again, by the way, he had a knee brace on. I don't know how much that impacted him in this game. Seems new. I don't remember him having that. Nothing has been mentioned before this game about any injuries, but it seemed like it hurt his mobility at times. He did run a little bit, but I think it's a factor. It's not making an excuse. He made some bad decisions today. He made some bad reads. He hesitated. He was too locked in at times. He was too slow getting the ball out of his hand. He made plenty of mistakes in this game. But you talk about the block punt that they got stopped at the 2. Then Monungai gets in, doesn't get in. They can't score. Then you have that deep pass to Ben Black. He drops it. Then they go down and score. I mean, just that alone, right? And dynamics change after every score, and the rest of the game is going to change, right? The flow, whatever. Not to mention, 9 possessions in Nebraska territory, and you score 7 points. Just brutal. Brutal offensive performance, and Rutgers loses for the first time this season. I think I said most of what I want to say. Other than this, the team did not give up. Greg Schiano coached teams did not give up. He didn't have his best day as a coach today. Shiraka had his worst day as an offensive coordinator of the season by far, arguably his worst since being at Rutgers a year and a half now. This team, the heat was obviously a factor early. And you can say, don't make it. I'm just saying that's just the reality of the game, right? And Nebraska, as much as Nebraska controlled the game, Rutgers had that game for the taking, and they couldn't do it. And that's what was so key in beating Virginia Tech and Washington is they didn't, they made plenty of mistakes, but they were able to take advantage of opponent mistakes, and they were able to punch it in. And this is a team that fell behind 14-0, fell behind for the first time all year. They didn't give up. And if they had just executed better, they would have won this game. It would have been one of the greatest comebacks in a long time. And instead, it's one of the most frustrating losses of all time, hands down. It's not often in a regular season for football with, this early in the season that I would say you're going to take this loss to the grave. This is a loss that's it's gonna bother every Rutgers fan for a long time. If you're new here, if you're a new Rutgers fan, welcome to the party, pal. This is, and my last point is that act like you've been here before. This team did not give up. Don't give up on this team. This is a brutal loss. Emotions are high. Nobody's going to sleep well tonight. Nobody's going to feel good about this tomorrow. Nobody's going to feel good about this game ever. It's going to stick with us forever. But there's 7 games to go. There's a lot of winnable games on this schedule. This team can still have a very, 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 very good season. Now, did they look more like a 7-5 team today than a 10-2 team? Absolutely. But it's one game. And the defense showed a ton of heart, and the offense kept battling. And it's a matter of execution. Now, the offensive line's got to get fixed. But as a Rutgers fan, I don't want to hear crap out there that, the season's over. This team's not good. They got lucky the last 2. Whatever, right? Don't give up on this team. I'm wearing my Keep Chopping shirt from Night and Day Apparel. 10% off. Scarlet Faithful code. Type in Scarlet Faithful. You get 10% off. Greg Schiano's going to say this to his team. I'm saying it to the fan base. Keep chopping. Also, new Scarlet Faithful hoodies available. Check it out. I'll have them soon. I'm going to raffle some off soon. But listen, it was a terrible loss. And I think I covered a lot. I probably missed a little bit. We'll have David Anderson back this week to talk it all. Again, no understating, no sugarcoating. This is a brutal loss. This is I think the worst loss of Greg Schiano 2.0 because of everything that was at stake. To go 5-0, 2-0, have the whole country talking about you. Nick Saban's praising you on game day today. It's just a huge missed opportunity, huge missed momentum. Everything you can think of. Brutal. Don't give up on this team. Thank you so much for listening and watching once again. I hope this therapy session helped at all. I don't know if it helped. I don't know if it helped me. But Rutgers now 4-1, 1-1. You got Wisconsin coming in next week. Huge game. They scored 52 on Purdue. Purdue's probably the worst team in the Big Ten. You got to bounce back. And I think also this game shows, well, I know I'm rambling here. While Rutgers has this advantage, right? They had 1 day extra rest, all that stuff. It doesn't really matter when it comes to if you have key guys that are hurt. 1 day doesn't matter. 1 day doesn't matter. And it's not to say you don't want the extra rest, right? And there's been lots of talk this season about all the extra rest they have. And it is important, right? And having double bye is huge. But the 1 day rest meant nothing because you have a lot of guys banged up on this team. Now, that's not why they lost. It's not why they lost. But it's obviously a concern that you're mid part of the season and you have key guys that are really battling through stuff. And this team showed a ton of heart to do that. And they almost won the game. And that's why I'm kind of heartbroken for the team because they did not give up. They just made too many mistakes. And 9 possessions in Nebraska territory. And you come up with 7 points. 1 of 2, just 2 trips of those 9 possessions in Nebraska territory make the red zone. Score just once. Take that stat to the grave. Thank you so much for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful podcast.